The idea that like somebody as big as Taylor Swift talking about Braille makes so many other people in society now think about and talk about Braille. And I think that's a win for the community. Taylor Swift has been making waves on the internet recently with the release of her new album, The Life of a Showgirl, and I want to be oh so very clear that this video has nothing to do with that. I planned to do this Molly Rambles on where pop culture meets disability for probably a month now, but as you may know, I've been traveling a ton on the road with my book tour for the release of Unseen: How I Lost My Vision But Found My Voice, which is now out everywhere you buy books, ebook, audiobook, read by yours truly, regular hardcover book. You can get it anywhere you buy books, so please purchase it and support. I would appreciate it so much. But yeah, I've had this video planned since before the album even came out, but the album's out now, so here we are. I'm not going to talk about the album release. And I also want to go into this saying I'm not a huge Swiftie. I'm not a Swiftie. I'm like a moderate Swiftie. I'm somewhere in the middle. I've been listening to Taylor since 2008. I've been to 3 concerts. I went to Fearless, Red, and 1989. I do not know all the lore. I do not follow all the Easter eggs. I'm not like that level of Swiftie. So that's where I fall, somewhere in between. But there are a few things related to Taylor that relate to disability and Sabrina Carpenter that relates to ableism. So stick around because we're just going to do a classic Molly Rambles where I get into it and share my thoughts on these things. First off, Taylor Swift and the Braille Easter egg. She did the podcast with Travis Kelce. What is it called?
Well, I don't know his podcast name.
See, I'm not a big enough fan to know the podcast name, okay? He has a podcast that I've never once listened to, where she was on it. I also did not listen to it. But this clip was circulating the internet.
You don't even care what that thing is above that doorway, under that dimly lit, flickering light over there that's upside down backwards in Braille. You don't need to know what that is.
I love this. Yeah.
But if you want to look at that,
but if you do,
then it's there.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like if you know,
if you're in the know,
you know.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Then you know.
Let's talk about something I don't know.
In that clip, she essentially alludes to the fact that she may have used some form of Braille as an Easter egg. So then the internet was going wild, and there was some people trying to decode that Braille. And I got very excited about this. And I made this video. As a blind Swiftie who happens to be a part of the less than 10% of the blind community who actually reads Braille, I could not be more excited about this. And now that all the girlies are excited about Braille, let me tell you a little bit about it. So first off, it is not a language, it is a code. It's made up of 6 dots that make up every single letter, number, and symbol. And even though it is a tactile code designed to be read with your fingers, it is actually easier to sight read. So you, a sighted person, can absolutely learn Braille. You can just use Google. There's like Braille translators. You can memorize the visual code so that you can be up to date and like looking out for all the Braille Easter eggs Taylor might use in the future. Now, in that comment section, of course, of anybody making videos about Braille, Easter eggs, and Taylor Swift, I actually have a captive audience of people who know Braille. Not just blind people who read Braille, which we could not see, the Braille Easter egg, but sighted people who read Braille because they are either the loved one of a blind person, have gone out of their way to learn Braille. My mom tried, bless her soul, didn't work out. Or they are vision itinerants Braille teachers. So in the comment section, overwhelmingly, it seemed from the comments on my video that it's not Braille. And people were reaching. And this is what happens when you insert, I think the person said they like inserted a picture of the lights from the Eras Tour stage into ChatGPT and we're like, what does this say in Braille? And like even what it said seemed nonsensical. But I was just excited because the idea, I don't know, that like our little humble community is getting a moment is really fun. And I also think the idea of using Braille in lights is really fun, because weird thing about me is like when I'm bored and I'm sitting at like a restaurant or an airport or a doctor's office and I'm waiting, I will look at the ceiling and I'll make Braille out of the lights. It's very blind of me. All I can see is light, okay? So I've got no entertainment other than to stare at like spotlights, and it only works when there's like patterns of like specific spotlight kind of lights. And it's very fun to do. So I think the idea of turning lights into Braille is fun, especially for blind people like me, very niche, who both read Braille and have enough light perception left to see dots of light. I know it's like me and a handful of other people, but it would still make me feel really included. And I don't see people using Braille as like commodifying or creating novelty out of an accessibility necessity. I don't personally view it that way. I'd love to hear your perspective. But I think when Braille is done correctly, even by people who don't need Braille themselves, for me, it just makes me feel seen. It makes me feel included. It makes me feel like I matter and I was considered as a potential consumer or fan of something. I don't mind when people use Braille as long as they do it correctly. Obviously, when it's done as like lights, it's never gonna be like tactile, which is what Braille should be. I just don't like it when Braille is used purely as an aesthetic thing. Like there is a beauty brand who the person like is not blind or anything who owns it, and they have visual Braille as an element of the design of their logo. That's weird to me. Like it's not tactile. It's just a visual appearance of dots. That's why we literally held back on releasing my book, because they didn't print the dots raised enough for me to feel comfortable releasing it, because Braille shouldn't be used simply as like a design element in those ways. If it's used on packaging and stuff, it shouldn't be just like a logo design. It should be tactile, legible, and correct sizing. The amount of people, including when my book was initially designed, who do not understand that Braille is a standardized size. It is not like print font that you can change the size 10, size 12, size 14 font. It's not like that. Braille is a standardized size that allows you to read it with one fingertip. I have received countless PR packages over the years where companies have slapped Braille onto something, and the Braille is like absolutely comically massive. Like I can touch one dot at a time in each letter. It is so oversized. Equally, I've had Braille that is so flat, I can't even read it, so it's useless. I've had Braille that is microscopic, like the teeniest, tiniest Braille that is, again, illegible. That's why there is a standardized size that has been deemed as the easiest, most legible way to read Braille for people. So I think it's important that if you're using Braille, you're like consulting the community to make sure that things are spelt correctly, that you're using the correct dots. I could not visually inspect the design of my own Braille on my cover, obviously. So I sent it to the folks at the CNIB, Canadian National Institute for the Blind, and their Braille department did the visual review of the Braille on the document that was mocked up. But when I got the first one, the Braille was really oversized, and even my boyfriend pointed that out. He was like, oh, it's really big. And I was like, oh, no. I need to make sure they know it has to be a standardized size. So I think it's very important if you're doing Braille stuff, you're doing it with the community in mind, and it's not just being used as like a design element. But I do think like the lights, if Taylor was to ever do something like that, like I would feel really included, and I would be excited by that personally, even though it does go against like some of those other ideas that like it should be readable and legible and purposeful. I still think the idea that like somebody as big as Taylor Swift talking about Braille makes so many other people in society now think about and talk about Braille. And I think that's a win for the community. And that's just the way I see it. That's the last line in my book. Second Taylor Swift point that I want to make. And I was like starting to randomly see this. Look, I am not somebody who's like in the groups, on the threads, following the Swifties. I just am not into pop culture enough to do that for anybody. But I started randomly, like when I would see videos, I was randomly like in the comment section seeing people claiming that Taylor Swift is autistic or in some way neurodivergent. And I was like, is that true? And I just don't know. Like, that seems like something I would be aware of if she ever came out and said that she was diagnosed as neurodivergent in some way. So I started Googling, and no, it has never, ever, ever been something that she has come forward and said. It's never something anybody on her team has ever come forward and said. It is simply a conspiracy theory. It is simply an internet assumption. People getting maybe a bit too parasocial and assigning Taylor's personality traits or lyrics a diagnosis or label of being neurodivergent. And I want to be so very clear. I don't think it's okay to speculate on somebody's disability or diagnosis status ever, unless somebody tells you what their diagnosis is or that they have a diagnosis. It is not our job to speculate what they may or may not have. I don't think it's right to speculate that people don't have a disability when they claim they do. And it's equally not okay to evaluate whether we think somebody has a diagnosis or disability that has never once come out and talked about anything related to that. So that is like firmly my stance on that. We need to shut that ish down when we see people talking about that on the internet. She may, and that's great. Our community would have another icon joining it, but we don't need labels to have representation. So if you see traits in Taylor Swift that are similar to traits that you have as somebody with ADHD or autism, and it makes you feel seen or comforted, that's great. It does not necessarily mean that she has that same diagnosis, and you can still feel seen in those traits in her without sharing a label. When I was looking up like the reasons people speculate that she's autistic, frankly, I aligned with a ton of them. I was like, oh, those are like all traits I would consider myself to have. And never once have I had a neurodivergent diagnosis, and it's never been something that I've even considered that I should seek. It's not a diagnosis I think I live with. So there can be traits in people that align with neurodivergent traits while not being neurodivergent. For example, I mask a lot. It's something that I've become more and more aware that I do. For a lot of my life, it was subconscious. In my late 20s, early 30s, I've been unraveling that and trying my best to clock when I am doing it and why I am doing it and change. But masking is something that I, as a blind woman, often find myself doing in social settings when I am with exclusively sighted and non-disabled people, like a coping mechanism to feel safe, to feel accepted. I am often a chameleon with my personality. I always have been. My mom is the same. I'm a social comedian who I subconsciously mirror the people I'm with. So when I am in a more corporate setting, the corporate side of Molly comes out because that's the energy I'm around. When I am like filming a TikTok in my bedroom, maybe the more sassy Molly comes out because that's like more of my safe space on the internet to have that like sassy side of me come out. When I am with friends who are like fashion and beauty girlies, best believe all I'm talking about is fashion and beauty. Like that's the side of me I am bringing forward because it's the side that most easily connects with that person. Whereas when I'm with my friends who have disabilities, I'm talking a lot more about like disability rights, disability culture, accessibility, representation in media, like the things that we connect over. All of these are real facets of me, but I choose to bring different parts forward to connect deeper with the people that I'm with. So I'm never being inauthentic to myself. I'm just pulling different parts forward that will connect easier or be more appropriate for the environment that I'm in. These are both traits that people have assigned to Taylor that may or may not be related to any kind of diagnosis. So I think my stance is pretty clear. Either end of the spectrum, whether somebody claims they have a diagnosis or does not claim, it is not on anybody on the internet to speculate. And I think so often as a society, we dehumanize people from behind a screen. Whether that be like A-list celebrities, they feel very distant from us. And especially those of us who grew up in the 90s and early 2000s, we saw paparazzi dehumanize celebrities so much and tabloids dehumanize them so much that it became very easy as a society to other them and act like they are zoo animals that we can gawk at and say whatever we want, and they won't hear it. It will never get back to them. They won't feel it. And that in the 2010s and 2020s has translated to, I think, internet personalities as well. even on my own videos, I get comments where they'll say like, she and her. She's so annoying, her voice is irritating. Instead of saying you. Like, it's like they think it's not my comment section. Why do her eyes shake? It's weird. Hello, I can see it. Even positive ones. Like, people will sometimes be like, she's so inspiring, I really love her content. She's so funny. But they're like talking as if it's not on my video. And I'm not scrolling my comment section. It's really strange the way some people disconnect from the people behind a screen, which is like a whole other topic that I think is super problematic. And it's really strange, like my mom will tell you, I always grew up as a young child. And I don't know if it's just because I grew up dreaming of working in entertainment, or if it's just the empath in me who constantly is an overfeeler for everybody else, when perhaps I shouldn't be. But I grew up always like deeply upset by tabloids. And I think it's honestly a part of why as an adult, I'm not really into pop culture in the sense of like knowing everything about celebrities and what's going on and who they dated. Like, I just don't know that stuff and I don't care to know. And I don't care to follow content that talks about that kind of stuff because to me, it feels invasive in a way that that person does not deserve me to invade their life. I am an internet personality who does like expose a lot of my life from the horse's mouth. It's me doing it intentionally. But like a musician or an actor, like they're just showing up to set, getting on stage, doing their thing, providing art for our entertainment. And that does not mean that we now get access to every other aspect of their life or that we should get access. So for me, it's always felt very invasive. But my mom will say like, I would be the first to defend a celebrity when people were dogpiling on them when I was like really little. And I did it my whole life. And even still, like Taylor's album, Life of a Showgirl, came out just before my book came out. And seeing so many negative reviews, it like made me feel really stressed and sad because I was like putting myself in that position with my book. And I was like, if this piece of art that I've worked for 2.5 years on, that I poured my heart and soul into, that I care so much about, gets into people's hands in a week, and I open my TikTok and everybody's just like talking smack about it and like how awful it is, I would just feel like so destroyed. And I just felt like sad. Like I was like, oh, and I understand like we have to be able to critique art and that's okay. But I think there's like a level of being able to critique art that still humanizes somebody and like still respects people as individuals. And I think there's a line that we cross. And again, this probably comes from my background of being bullied as well. Like I'm just very sensitive to hurting people's feelings. And I think there's a way that we can be critical and like review art and content that we disagree with without being mean or hateful or rude. I feel like we live in a world that's lost compassion and empathy for others. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. And we live in a pretty awful world right now. Okay, I'm not gonna, last 5 years for society, it's been rough as a whole, right? And I think we must not let that rob us of our compassion and our empathy and our kindness. And I really think the only way to bridge these gaps that we have so many of right now in the world is through our shared humanity and not through pointing at our differences. And it becomes so easy to only see the ways in which we're different when we're just like doom scrolling or objectifying people through tabloids. But most likely, like so many of the people we demonize and hate, like we have at least one shared quality with, right? And at the end of the day, no matter what, strip everything away, we all need sleep, need food, need water, need air in our lungs. We all need blood pumping through our bodies. We all need love, you know? And I don't know. This is going into a whole other direction. This is truly a Molly Rambles. But my point is, I think people have dehumanized Taylor and people like her so much that they think it's fair game to go speculate on her disability status. And I want to be really clear that there's nothing wrong with, I mean, I don't even have to say this on this channel. There's nothing wrong with being disabled. There's nothing wrong with having autism. So it's not like I'm saying like, don't point it out because it's like a bad, shameful thing. It's not. It's just none of our business unless she chooses to make it our business. That's ultimately my point. Now, on to Sabrina Carpenter and her ableism. I think most ableism in the world is unintentional. I always say the way in which we as disabled people are lucky compared to other minority communities is most of the discrimination we face is due to ignorance, not due to hatred. And hatred is a hell of a lot harder to combat than ignorance. So, do I think Sabrina Carpenter wrote this lyric in Man-Child this very popular song with the intention of being ableist? Absolutely not. Do I think she thinks now that it's ableist? Absolutely not. Do I think that anybody else on her team, the producers, the co-writers, the label, have listened to this and had a split second where they thought, maybe that's inappropriate? No, I don't think that happened. I think they're all completely in the dark. And frankly, I've heard nobody else talk about this in the disability community. Doesn't mean they haven't. I just haven't seen it on my feed. And I follow a ton of disabled creators. So maybe I'm actually the crazy one and I'm in the wrong. So this is truly just a discussion in the comment section below. But I was on the treadmill at the gym and I just clicked on like New and Now on Spotify because I didn't know what I wanted to listen to. So I was like listening to kind of like the top hits right now. And that was the first time I heard Man Child by Sabrina Carpenter. I want to say it was like 6 weeks ago. It was closer to when it had come out or when it was like getting super popular on TikTok. And instantly when it got to the pre-chorus, I was like, ooh, like it hit me immediately. I didn't even have to think twice before my brain said, ooh, oh no, ooh, I do not like that. That makes me uncomfy. I do not like that at all. And then afterwards, I like mentioned it to my boyfriend and he had the same reaction that I think most people have was that, oh, like unless you explained that to me in depth, I definitely would not have read it that way. And I know that most people will not read it as ableism, but those who are impacted by the slur will hear it as that. And I guess that's where I come from. We will start from the top of verse 1, just for any of you who have not heard the song to get the full context going into it.
You said your phone was broken, just forgot to charge it. Whole outfit you're wearing, God, I hope it's ironic. Did you just say you're finished? Didn't know we started. It's all just so familiar, baby, what do you call it? Then here's the pre-chorus. Stupid. Or is it slow? Maybe it's useless, but there's a cuter word for it, I know.
Did anybody catch it? Did it jump out to anybody else immediately like it did to me? Because it's like, I know that there's some people that are going to say I'm reaching, but I don't feel like I'm reaching because it immediately jumped out to me. Like, it's not like I had to listen to it a few times before it hit me. Like, instantly, it was a gut punch. Slow.
There's another line that also says, half your brain just ain't there.
Yeah. So, I understand that the song is meant to be dissing a man who did her dirty or poking fun at a guy, right? The word slow is very similar to the R word, which we have thankfully phased out of our vocabulary. Or most of us have. There's still some awful people out there using it. For no goddamn reason. There's no reason. We have so many other words. Slow has been used to negatively talk about somebody who is cognitively delayed, who has some kind of mental disability. And when you're using the word slow, and then you're also putting it next to being stupid and useless, I don't like that. It makes me uncomfy because, well, slow is not something that I've ever been called. I absolutely know there are people in my community who have had that word weaponized against them because of their disability, who have been bullied for that. And I hate to think that they would hear this song and hear the words useless, stupid, slow, and be feeling like they are that. And I know there was a song a few years back, I want to say it was Lizzo. They used the word spaz, which is another ableist slur. And, you know, the community came out and was calling the artist out for using that slur.
The song is called Girls with 3 R's.
And I believe Lizzo did like make an apology for it. I hope I'm correct. But I recall this happening. And I think just like me calling out the use of slow in this way, there will be a lot of people who are like, you're being over the top, you're being too sensitive, you're being dramatic. I am not the word police. If you follow me, you know. There's so many times that I say like, we need to stop being so over the top with our language policing when it comes to disability. I talked about in this disability hot takes video where like things like blind leading the blind. I don't think we need to phase that out. I don't think nobody's ever used blind leading the blind to me in a hateful way. But people have used slow in a hateful way. People have used spaz in a hateful way to disabled people. But when it comes to phrases that have never been used with intention of assigning negativity to disability or to a disabled person, I don't think we need to phase it out just because it has disability relevance. I think it's when the words like the R word have been so specifically and directly used consistently over and over again to belittle and to be negative and hateful towards a certain specific group of disabled people with a specific diagnosis that is problematic. And again, this is not to be like, screw Sabrina Carpenter. No, this is just to say, I think microaggressions show up in everyday life all the time. And most people are just so unaware of the lived experiences of disabled people and do not understand the way in which words like that have been harmful to our community and have been weaponized against our community. And so they unintentionally use them. And that's really what this conversation is about, is just how so much of the ableism in our society is accidental and unintentional, but it doesn't mean it doesn't affect people. Intention and impact aren't always aligned. And so, I don't know, I just wanted to like bring it up and get pulse check, like see if it jumped out to other people, see how other people are feeling about it, what you think of this. And this was really just meant to be a Molly Rambles on the intersection of pop culture and disability, which I think there's rarely an intersection, but there should be more of. So that's the video for today. And if you want more Molly, you can click over here to watch this video where I reacted to ableist comments on the internet, or you can click over here to watch another video I recently posted. Okay, that's all for now. Bye.